Away from everyone else, these people created worlds of their own. Alone in forests, mountains, and rivers, they lived differently until they got caught on camera. Human-free life.
Hii haina shukurani. Na dunia ukafuatana vya dunia, mtu anaweza kuaga maisha mbele ya wakati. Ndio nimeona basi. Wangwana usema ni heri kuishi mwenyewe pali uishi na wanafiki. Ndio nimeamua kuyaishi ndani ya pori hii.
Fidel, once a respected commissioner and lawyer in the Democratic Republic of Congo, chose to leave society after years of betrayal and disappointment. Frustrated by people taking advantage of his honesty and hard work, he retreated to a small forest house, living entirely alone for over 5 years. His neighbors are wild animals and birds, and he survives using a solar panel, creek water, and forest resources. A self-taught writer and avid reader, Fidel crafts books about Africa and decorates his home with African art. Fearful of humans but not animals, he values solitude, peace, and simplicity above all else. Fear of woman. There's this man in Rwanda, Calixton Zamwita, who has lived alone for 55 years because of an extreme fear of women. Yeah, that's decades of isolation. From cooking to sleeping, everything happens inside his own space, and neighbors only leave food at a distance. Can you imagine doing life entirely on your own, with the outside world almost invisible? He says he misses nothing and no one, and honestly, that's kind of mind-blowing. It makes you wonder what it takes to survive completely alone like that. Amazon tribe. Far above the Amazon rainforest, a camera finally caught what most of the world has never seen, an uncontacted tribe living completely on their own. From a kilometer up, you can see men with red body paint hunting with spears and bows, women tending gardens of manioc, bananas, and papaya, and simple huts made of leaves and wood. They've lived like this for generations, untouched by modern life. Tarzan. Meet the real-life Tarzan, a man who spent 41 years living deep in the jungle. Ho Van Lung survived with only his father and brother, learning every secret the forest had to offer. No roads, no technology, no outside world, just trees, rivers, and wildlife. He didn't even know women existed for most of that time. Hunting, gathering, and staying safe became his everyday life. When he finally returned to civilization, the noise, buildings, and crowds must have felt like another planet. His story is pure survival and human determination. Mount Athos monks. If you're brave enough to step onto the cliffs of Carulia, Mount Athos, you'll meet monks living where most fear to tread. Their homes are carved into sheer rock, accessible only by ropes or narrow ledges. Some have spent decades suspended between sky and sea, surviving on rainwater, fish, and baskets delivered from above. Every step is a test of balance, every day a dance with danger. But for these monks, risk and devotion are inseparable. The cliffs shape their souls as much as their prayers do, a life where isolation becomes a teacher, and the edge is a classroom. Cave Village. Ever heard of a village hidden inside a giant cave? Welcome to Zhongdong, tucked deep in the mountains of southwestern China. About 18 Miao families live here, keeping the same lifestyle for decades. They've refused government relocation, choosing life under the stone roof with their animals and simple homes. Every day is a climb. Every night echoes with the sounds of the cave. Life is isolated, quiet, and rugged. But for these families, the cave isn't just home, it's freedom. Samuel. You know what's wild? There's this man named Samuel living deep in the Siberian forest completely on his own for over 20 years. No neighbors, no city noise, just snow, trees, and his loyal dogs. He's built everything by hand, from his cabin to his little fireplace. His grocery store is the forest itself. He hunts, fishes, and melts snow for water. Sounds crazy, right? But the peace he's found out there, honestly, it kinda makes city life feel overrated.
Trugan kala. Tamu mo abu kung mo behe. Bile kharang mar won kharan na betul ni won na bile no kete kharang hastangalar bile hapur. Ebi garang kholu hoduk walang go pakin na wala.
Gardener of Solitude. You ever hear about a guy who traded the modern world for a mountain garden? That's Joe Hollis. For 50 years, he's been living off the grid in North Carolina, surrounded by herbs instead of neighbors. No Wi-Fi, no rush, just the rhythm of nature. He believed nature gives everything we need if we care enough to learn.
Fennel really good for digestion, and yarrow's good for wounds, and Echinacea everybody knows about.
And the wild part? Scientists, students, and travelers still visit that spot just to see what one quiet man created out of pure passion.
It went down. How long do you think you could sustain out here?
Me personally, probably indefinitely. People's first thought is all the stuff they're going to have to give up. What I want to focus in is all the stuff you're going to get.
Temperature recorder. Way up in the Rockies, where most people wouldn't last a week, Billy Barr has built a peaceful, snow-covered life. Since the 1970s, he's lived alone in Gothic, a ghost town that freezes for months. He went there to escape the noise of the world and ended up becoming a hero for science. Every single day, through storms and snow, he's measured temperature, snowfall, and animal activity just for fun at first. But those notes became priceless climate records. Scientists now rely on his decades of data, while Billy keeps sipping tea in his quiet cabin, laughing at how boredom accidentally helped save the planet. The Caveman.
My name is Daniel Suelo, and I haven't earned or spent a single cent in 14 years, and I live totally without money.
Meet Daniel, the man who swapped city walls for stone ones. 14 years ago, he got tired of paying rent and decided to live differently. His cave isn't just shelter, it's a statement. No money, no routine, no rush. He lives off the land, using what nature offers and letting go of everything else. While we count coins and chase deadlines, he counts sunsets and listens to silence. Sounds extreme? Maybe. But for Daniel, this is what rich really looks like. Christopher Knight.
Christopher Knight lived in the woods of central Maine for years without speaking to anyone for nearly 3 decades. He stole to survive. That's according to law enforcement officials.
Yeah, the story gained international attention because it seemed really so unbelievable. But today, Christopher Knight dealt with the consequences of his actions.
What if you vanished from the world and no one knew where you went for years? That's exactly what Christopher Knight did. He walked into the Maine woods as a young man and never came back, living alone in a tiny tent through freezing winters for 27 years. He survived by quietly borrowing supplies from nearby cabins and speaking almost no words. Locals called him the North Pond Hermit, thinking he was just a rumor. Turns out he was real, and maybe the quietest man to ever exist in our noisy world. Mountain life. You might think being alone means lonely, but for Yuri, it doesn't. He lives in the mountains above Dubove, with fields, animals, and the sky for neighbors. For over a decade, he's been free of schedules, bills, and distractions. His days begin with horses neighing, dogs waking, and ends with kittens curled at his feet. In between, just life unfolding, seasons changing, snow falling, grass growing. And in that vast quiet, he found something most of us have forgotten: freedom. Log cabin life.
When you live down in the valley, you know, and you got mountains all around, you can't see out. And to climb once in a while and get up on top and look across the top and see new country and such as that, I think is a good feeling. I mean, you don't feel like you're isolated or anything like that, you know. It's just, you're up where you can see.
Dick Proenica walked into the Alaskan wilderness in 1967 with nothing but determination and hand tools. At 51, he carved his own log cabin from trees and stone, far from roads, electricity, or anyone else. He lived alone for decades, observing wildlife, chopping wood, and keeping meticulous journals of every season. Bears, eagles, and moose became daily companions, not threats. For Dick, the wilderness wasn't lonely, it was home. Alone among peaks. Faustino Barrientos carved out a life most of us can't even imagine. Since 1965, he's been living alone on the shores of Lake O'Higgins, in a house he built from a shipwrecked vessel.
La puse acá. Y esta la traje con caballo entera, la saqué. Son vidrios de barco, y estos vidrios, tremendos vidrios son, mire.
No neighbors nearby, just mountains, rivers, and livestock for company. He survives off the land, tending his animals, cooking over wood fires, and moving through rugged paths most wouldn't dare. Time moves differently here. Days are measured by sun and snow, not clocks. For decades, his only companions were nature and solitude. Isolation here isn't empty. It's full of survival, rhythm, and freedom. Solitude and survival. High in the Carpathians, there's a man named Vasil, claimed to be 92, living entirely on his own. No neighbors for miles, no electricity, just mountains, wildlife, and his own skills to rely on. Every day is survival, chopping wood, walking steep paths, and tending to what little he needs. Watching him move through his remote world, you realize how different life can be when stripped of everything modern. For decades, the mountains have been his companion, his workplace, and his shelter proof that humans can adapt to nearly any challenge. Forest life duo. This grandpa and his dog have turned isolation into adventure. For over a decade, they've survived in a forest, relying on instincts, skill, and sheer determination. The dog seems almost human, understanding his owner's needs, keeping him safe, and sharing in the small joys of forest life. Every day is a challenge, but together they've built a routine, a partnership, and a life that many of us could never imagine. Nature becomes home, and the bond between man and dog becomes extraordinary. 300 days survival.
Hi everybody. Now it's morning starts to come again, which is very good.
Xavier Rossett spent nearly a year completely alone on a remote Pacific island, living like a real-life Robinson Crusoe. No Wi-Fi, no stores, just him, the waves, and whatever he could catch or make. He built a shelter from scratch, fished for food, and faced storms that would make most of us run screaming. But he did it. Every day was survival. Every little victory felt huge. And the isolation, well, it changed him. Nature became both his challenge and his companion, and he came out tougher than anyone could imagine. Last Warani man. A team of experts exploring the Ecuadorian Amazon found the last man of a Warani tribe. He had been living alone there for many years and had grown quite old. His only companion was a parrot that stayed with him all the time. The two of them survived together in these tough conditions. The experts didn't disturb them and quietly left the area, leaving the man and his parrot to continue their life in the forest. Cave survivor. Can you believe someone actually lived in a cave for 45 years? Pedro Luca did, high up in the Argentine mountains, with nothing but trees, animals, and his own skills. He hunted, gathered wood, and stayed alert for cougars, all while never seeing the modern world. He says he misses nothing and no one, and honestly, that's wild to think about. Just imagine surviving that long completely alone, in nature, with no one around. Pedro's life makes our rough days in the city feel ridiculously easy. Ken Smith. Have you heard about Ken Smith, the hermit of Loch Trig? This man walked away from the busy world and built his own cabin deep in the Scottish Highlands. For around 40 years, he's lived entirely on his own, chopping wood, fishing, and trekking miles just to get supplies. Winters are harsh, summers are fleeting, yet he thrives in solitude. Ken transformed remoteness into freedom, showing that peace isn't in cities, screens, or crowds. It's out in the wild, surrounded by nature, with nothing but your own rhythm to guide each day. Cave monk. For nearly 2 decades, one man has made a cave in Moldova his entire universe, leaving human contact and modern life far behind. The cave walls are his only companions, and the wind becomes the only voice in his world. Inside this remote cave monastery, he survives with scarce food and freezing nights, while the outside world rushes on without him. His days blend into a rhythm of endurance, silence, and survival. Few know his name, and fewer have seen him 19 years testing the edges of human strength and solitude. Patagonia, Last Gaucho. Meet Faustino Barrientos, the real-life hermit of Patagonia. Since 1965, he's lived alone beside Lake O'Higgins in a cabin built from an old shipwreck. His nearest neighbors, a 2-day horseback ride away. Faustino raises cattle, fishes, and lives almost entirely off the land. Now, in his 80s, his quiet world is slowly changing as modern life creeps closer through tourism and government reach. Yet, even after decades of solitude, Faustino says the silence, the land, and his animals are all the company he truly needs. Woman of wilderness. You think your internet's bad? Try living where there's no electricity, no roads, and no people for miles. Meet Agafia Likova, the legendary woman who's called the Siberian wilderness home her entire life. Born in 1944, she never left the forest. Her family escaped society decades ago, and she just stayed. Today, in her 80s, she still chops wood, grows her food, and shares her tiny cabin with a few cats. She laughs at modern life and says she doesn't miss it one bit. Out there, it's just Agafia, the taiga, and the quiet hum of survival. The Winter Keeper.
You know, when I first came to Yellowstone, I thought that it was immortal. But over these decades that I've had the great good fortune to live here, I see that it's under continual threat.
When Yellowstone closes for winter, almost everyone leaves except Stephen Fuller. For 50 years, he's watched the park transform into a frozen world of silence and snow. Alone in his cabin, surrounded by endless white, Fuller finds peace where others might lose their minds. He clears snow from rooftops, photographs frozen geysers, and listens to wolves echo through the night. To him, this frozen solitude is paradise, even when it's -30 outside. For half a century, he's witnessed nature's rawest beauty and power, right from the heart of America's wildest winter kingdom. Willard the Hermit. Snow-covered trees, a flicker of smoke, and a cabin hidden deep in the woods that was Willard McDonald's world. In the 1940s, he jumped from a troop train heading to war and disappeared into the wild near Gully Lake, Nova Scotia. For nearly 60 years, he lived alone, surviving harsh winters and quiet summers. He built his own tools, cooked what he hunted, and played a homemade guitar by lamplight. People often tried to convince him to return to town, but Willard would simply smile and say he already had a home right there in the wilderness. Eva's Quite World. Ever wonder what life looks like when you trade noise for mountain silence? Meet Eva, a 93-year-old woman who's done exactly that. Her days begin with wood smoke curling into the cold air and end beside a small fire that's kept her company for decades. She tends her animals, chops her own firewood, and cooks simple meals in her cabin. There's no electricity, no noise, just her, the mountains, and the rhythm of nature. Eva calls this peace. And honestly, watching her, you start to believe she's right. Rainforest Hermit.
I didn't purposefully set out to go into the forest. That's where I ended up. I ended up there because I had really nowhere else to go. There were no human voices. There were no cars. There was no interference. There was just the soft sounds of the forest.
Meet Gregory Smith, a man who went from living in the rainforest to teaching at a university. Yep, for nearly 10 years. He survived on insects in the wild. He had lost hope, but the forest gave him time to rebuild himself. When he finally stepped back into society, he didn't just survive, he transformed. Now he's Dr. Gregory Smith, proving that it's never too late to turn your life around, no matter where you've been or what you've faced.
Towards the end of my TAFE experience, the tertiary prep, it was becoming evident that I would qualify for an invitation to university, and this word sociology kept jumping out at me. And when I looked up the definition of sociology, it was about, the study of human society, and I thought, yeah, I want to know about human society. I want to understand why I hate society so much.
Paradise Island. Some lives are measured not by years, but by solitude. For Mauro Morandi, 3 decades on Budeli Island became a meditation on freedom and nature. From 1989 until 2021, he lived alone in a small bunker, caring for the island's fragile pink sands and watching the Mediterranean waves crash below. He survived on rainwater, minimal supplies from nearby La Maddalena, and his own resourcefulness. Winters were harsh, sometimes with days of total silence. Visitors were rare, and modern distractions like phones or cars never tempted him. Mauro's life wasn't simply about being alone. It was about connection with the land, with time itself. River Dave.
I don't see how I can go back to being a hermit because society is not going to allow it. Even if I rebuilt right there, I would have people coming every weekend. So I just can't get out of society anymore.
For more than 20 years, David Lidstone, known as River Dave, called the banks of the Merrimack River his home. He lived alone in the woods, relying on his cabin, the river, and the forest for survival. His days were simple, chopping wood, growing food, and listening to the wind through the trees. But in 2021, fire destroyed the cabin that had been his sanctuary for decades. The solitude he once cherished had vanished with the flames. After careful thought, Dave chose not to rebuild his hermit lifestyle. He left the river behind, moving to Maine, carrying memories of freedom and wilderness, but accepting a life closer to people.
I'm not grieving over the loss of the hermit lifestyle. Maybe the things that I have been trying to avoid are the things that I really need in life. I grew up never being hugged, kissed, or any close contact.
Bobongo Secret. Deep in Gabon's Mayombe and Shailu Mountains, the Bobongo pygmies survive where humans rarely go. Experts filming in the forest followed Combo, one of the village's best hunters, as he navigated thick trees, hunted, and gathered food. Life here is raw and demanding, yet the Bobongo move with ease. Surrounded by mountains and forest, their traditions persist. Watching them, you see a culture clinging to its roots in a world that keeps changing. Lof Derg Freedom. Over 50 years ago, Del Harding wandered from England into Ireland, searching for space, freedom, and a life untouched by modern pressures. He settled in a dense forest on the shore of Lof Derg, building a simple life with his dogs as companions. Days are slow and deliberate fishing, walking through mossy woods, and listening to birds and the wind through the trees. No electricity, no phones, no modern distractions, just nature and solitude. His life is defined by freedom, self-reliance, and a deep connection with the land, a world where every day is shaped by choice. Modern hermits.
然后你觉得，想晒太阳，随便找个石头就可以晒太阳；想爬山就可以爬，是吧？就没那么多欲望吧，人也就简单了。
Some young Chinese adults are leaving city life behind to embrace the mountains, trading crowded apartments, screens, and deadlines for forests, meditation, and simplicity. They seek space and peace, drawing inspiration from Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian traditions. Some live as modern hermits temporarily, others long-term. I think their choice shows how exhausting modern life has become, and honestly, more of us could learn from stepping back. Handmade peace. Far from crowded streets, Mikhailo, a 70-year-old man in Ukraine's Transcarpathian Mountains, lives in harmony with nature. His hands built his home, his goats keep him company, and his loyal dog never leaves his side. The forest hums softly around him as sunlight filters through the trees. Each day is a simple sunrise, chores, and quiet. Mikhailo's life may look quiet, but it's full of freedom, fresh air, and pure peace. Loneliest man.
What kind of interesting ways has he found to spend his time?
A me piace i libri a leggere quando c'ho tempo, ma d'estate non c'ho tempo. Solo manuali tecnici, fisica, meccanica, disegno tecnico, quelle cose lì. Poi sono messo a studiare il cinese.
Il cinese? Are you saying that he's learning Chinese?
So, this guy in northern Italy has been living solo for 45 years. Yeah, 45. He left his house at 23, not really knowing why, and hasn't been to town in 2 decades. But loneliness? Not really his thing. Nights can feel a bit blue, sure, but mornings with his sheep make everything better. And the sheep? Sometimes best friends. Sometimes troublemakers, they kick him now and then. He keeps busy reading technical manuals, studying physics, and getting this, even learning Chinese. Oh, and he's inventing skis with brakes. He wants to go to Flaminio school. Honestly,
Vuole venire alla scuola di Flaminio.
this guy might just be the most interesting man alive.
Who else has done that? Nobody has done that.
Whoa. Oh, man. Whoa. Whoa.
Wilderness home. Ramiz Palos and his wife Zemina have been living 1,300 meters up Mount Vlasic in Bosnia for 21 years, embracing a life most only dream about. After the country emerged from a 4-year war, they left urban struggles behind, building a simple home with no running water or electricity. They grow their own vegetables, raise goats, and farm fish in a wild mountain river. Life isn't easy here. Bears, wolves, storms, and months of snow. But Ramis insists it's worth it. Here, he feels in control, independent, and fully alive. Woods hermit. For almost 20 years, a hermit in a small Chinese town has lived entirely alone in the forest. He makes his living by cutting wood and turning it into furniture to sell. Life in the woods is quiet and self-sufficient. Despite isolation, he thrives, mastering survival and craftsmanship. His days are measured by the sun, the trees, and the work of his hands, far from the bustle of modern life. In this hidden world, he's both master and prisoner of his solitary, wooden kingdom. Nature over people.
This is a greenhouse. I don't have any plants there. These are going away. So in my greenhouse is bones.
Yeah.
And the sun makes the bone white.
Way out in Iceland's wilderness, there's Free Willy, living a totally different kind of life. Surrounded by orca bones and wildlife, he's learned how to thrive alone, far from everyone else. Free Willy has faced loss of children, family, even his dog.
You know, my dog is resting here. I lost him for 6 months.
Oh, yeah?
And my grandkids sent me this because they pitied his grandfather.
But he's found peace in solitude, nature, and his craft. He talks about living in the moment, mastering your own mind, and finding freedom. Honestly, his story kind of proves that being alone isn't so bad. Sometimes stepping back from everyone else is exactly what you need.
Some kind of losers has always been. If you are not man enough, you are not worth to live in a man world. That has always been in Iceland.
You never feel alone?
So you learn to live alone. It's only learning.
Spiritual escape.
Gerasimos now live alone 30 years. Coming here sometime live together another monks, but don't stay living.
In the Judean wilderness, monks come to escape the noise of the world and find inner peace. They follow in the footsteps of John the Baptist, Elijah, and even Jesus, living in simple hermit cells carved into cliffs. Life here is quiet, disciplined, and sometimes harsh, but the solitude allows them to reflect, pray, and connect with their faith. For these monks, the wilderness is more than nature. It's a place to listen to the soul and rediscover purpose.
Roots of Christianity is to come here and to take a look at the wilderness and the landscape and try to understand the lifestyle of John the Baptist and Elijah, who was also spent his time in the Judean wilderness. Jesus spent time in the Judean wilderness.
Forest Ultramarathon.
You know, age is something other people will put on you. Like when my dad got 50, they said, "Oh, you're old now, you can't go in the woods by yourself." Yeah, and the age has been put on me all my life. And so age is something I deal with. And to me, I don't have an age.
At 78, most people take it easy. Dag Abi does not. The Norwegian ultramarathoner has tackled the punishing Canadian death race multiple times and continues to push limits few would dare. Yet his real challenge isn't on a race course. It's life alone in the British Columbia wilderness. Living off-grid in a converted school bus, he draws water from a creek, cooks over fire, and trains on rugged trails every day. For Doug, solitude isn't a punishment, it's a choice. In a world obsessed with comfort, he proves that independence, endurance, and a fearless spirit can shape an extraordinary life.
If you're perfectly imperfect, you always have to work on yourself. You can always try. One of my saying is, you know, tomorrow I want to be a better person than today.
Coldest village. Far in the snowy forests of Yakutia, Natalia and Dmitry live a life most can't imagine. Every morning, Dmitry chops wood and fetches ice-cold lake water, while Natalia cooks from their underground freezer stocked with summer's wild lingonberries. He crafts flutes from willow branches. Her passion keeps the family fed. Their tiny village of 100 thrives on cooperation. Life is harsh, but they wouldn't trade it for the city. In this frozen wilderness, survival and creativity go hand in hand. Remote freedom. Ever wondered what it's like to live where Google Maps doesn't even go? Meet Warwick Mitchell in Fiordland, New Zealand. His cabin is a 4-day hike from civilization, or a quick boat or plane ride if you're fancy. Surrounded by wild rivers, mountains, and animals, he's got solitude, epic views, and a tiny neighborhood always ready to help. Life is tough, but for Warwick, that's exactly the point. Who needs city chaos when you can live like a legend in the wild? And now, let us move on to our subscriber pick of the day. Deep in the Amazon, there once lived a man everyone called the Man of the Hole. No one knew his name, his language, or the full story of his tribe, because he was the last of them. He built tiny huts and dug strange, deep holes, maybe for rituals, or maybe for safety. For decades, he survived alone, planting corn, hunting, and living in silence. He never spoke to outsiders, never sought help, just lived off the land like his ancestors did. When he left this world in 2022, so did the last trace of his people's forgotten story.
Não chega até 2 metros, não.